We are joined by paranormal researcher Ashley, who is known as Ghost Story Girl on Instagram. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys today?
We're great.
Yeah, we're doing well. Thank you.
We first heard about you. We had Gina Black, who is known as She Haunts on Instagram, on with us, and she goes, "Oh, you guys are in, or near Orlando. Surely you must know Ghost Story Girl." And we're like, "No."
Oh, yeah, I'm a bit of a newer account. Yeah, I met Gina pretty early on when I started the account, and I was so excited because she's in South Florida, where I'm originally from, Fort Lauderdale. So it was really cool to get to talk to her and seeing everything she's doing. It's amazing. I love her live investigations and everything she does. So yeah, that's awesome, you guys. I saw that you interviewed her and watched that as well.
Oh, very cool.
Nice. And she is amazing, but we don't get out much. So that's why we didn't have info on you just quite yet. So
That's our
All right.
excuse. We're
That's what we're
hermits.
here for today, right?
absolutely.
We always ask people, how did you get started with the paranormal? Clearly, you started at a young age doing the paranormal investigation because you were like 17 when you went to the Myrtles plantation with your
I
dad.
did. Yeah. I started pretty young. I would say growing up, I always had a really big interest in history. I remember being like 8 or 9 and watching like Last of the Mohicans and Braveheart with my dad and like loving it. I didn't really play with like Barbies and things. I would like take my stuffed animals, like bears and things, and tie them to bamboo things we had in the house and like pretend I was an Indian, like cooking them over the fire.
Love that.
I was always just really into history from a young age. Plus, my dad kind of fostered that in me. And when I got older, when we were traveling around Florida for vacation, we would do historical tours wherever we went. And that usually tied in some kind of legend or ghost theme to it. Plus, I always loved horror movies as well, film and horror movies. So combine that together, and you kind of get like the perfect recipe for ghost hunting. And the more we traveled and the more tours I went on, um, I started kind of branching out and doing those things independently with my dad. So I would get a bunch of books on wherever we were going. I would read them myself, and then we would perform kind of our own investigations on those locations. So yeah, I started pretty early, got more into it in high school. And then when I was looking at different colleges, I was up here in Orlando looking at UCF, and I decided to go on a downtown ghost tour with my dad. And one of the stops was the old Orlando courthouse. It's now the Orlando Regional History Center, but back in the 1920s, it was the old courthouse. And I kind of had my first experience there, and ever since I've been hooked.
Nice. Can you tell us a little bit about that
Yeah.
experience?
So it was one of those, it was the first time I ever went on a tour where they allowed you to have instruments. So kind of like the K2 meters I think they had, and they had dowsing rods. This was back in the early 2000s still. So we get into this one room in the back of the courthouse, and the guide had said to all of us, I'm not going to tell you anything about this room yet. I want you to kind of walk around and see what you feel and what you pick up. So I did. And I remember telling myself in my head, like, okay, just open up. Like I took deep breaths and I really tried to get my mental space clear and calm. And then I remember the first image that popped into my mind was this letter E, like a big E in a circle, almost like you see on subway stations in New York City, those E line, A line. Um, and I was hesitant to say anything to the guide at first, and he prompted everyone. He's like, if you anything you get, no matter how weird, just tell me, like if you're picking up on anything. And I said, yeah, I'm seeing like the letter E. And then he said, the story behind this room is that there was a little girl named Emily who haunts this room, and we find her handprints on the windows and her mischievous energy running all around. She'll move things and play with things. But the story was that that was the last place she saw her parents together in the courthouse. So she stays the last place she saw them together. I guess it was a custody battle going on,
Mm.
and she haunts that room. So ever since then, I just thought it was so weird because I approach things so skeptically and analytically, that I can't really explain. So that kind of got me hooked. And ever since then, I've been going down the rabbit hole that is the paranormal.
I can relate to that very much because anytime we're investigating any location,
Mhm.
that's what I do. I hold everything very close to my chest because I don't want to influence anything on the outside, but I usually will whisper something to Diane and say,
Yeah,
"Hey, this is what I'm getting," because I don't want any outside influences, but again, I'm always trying to debunk and being skeptical as
right,
well.
right, right,
So,
right. And
Yeah,
who knows?
we consider ourselves open-minded skeptics as well. And
Okay.
so when Kelly started having sensitivities about stuff was when I really was convinced, because I used to think that psychics were full of hooey.
Yeah,
And, I didn't really buy into it. And then as she started getting feelings about places and impressions, kind of like what you were just describing there, I went, oh, maybe there is something to some of this.
right. It's just so undeniable, that element. And I think, especially in like Western cultures, we are so taught to discount those feelings when we have them and ignore them more so than
yeah.
like Eastern cultures or even back then in history. So it's very easy for us to brush it off and be like, oh, that was nothing. Oh, whatever. I must have heard it somewhere and said this, or apply some kind of psychological principle to it. So I
Mm,
think,
What's interesting is when you and your dad were doing some of your early investigations too, it was before there was all this different kinds of equipment we have nowadays. And some of it I buy into, some I'm not so sure. And
right.
I love that he went back to doing something like putting the baby powder down or the talcum powder or
Yes.
something to where you
Yes,
put flour just to see if you could get footprints and stuff in it.
exactly. Very old school. And I can't even remember where he saw some of this stuff. I was like trying to Google it after I finally got those videos uploaded, and I couldn't find too much on those techniques he was doing, like the one I just put up today about switching things around in the space and that the spirits don't like when things are moved. They may try to move them back, and you can tell. I don't know where he got that one, but yeah, really old school investigation techniques. It's fun to look back on.
Yeah, well, back in the day, that was what you had to work with.
Right, right.
So,
As far as an investigative approach, yeah.
You've been to so many places here in Florida. We found a couple of spots that we've never even heard of that you've been to. We have been to some similar ones. I know that I made a comment on your Instagram under the Clay County Jail.
Right, right.
And that place, I have to say, our favorite place to investigate are jails. We just absolutely love them. There's just so much energy to them. And the old jails are so cool because a lot of people weren't aware, but at the time, the warden and his whole family would live
Right.
there.
They would live there and they would raise their children there. There were children at the Clay County Jail, and the jailer's wife would be cooking the meals for the inmates. It's great. Like, think of that. But yes, I agree with you. That was my first jail I've ever investigated, and it happened to be a very spontaneous happenstance type thing where I just went and I got the place to myself for a good 3 or 4 hours. It was during the day, the investigation, but I was completely alone. And
Very
man,
cool.
kind of left me changed. I I can't explain. So I did the investigation a little backwards. I'm usually very heavy on the history on the front end.
mhm.
Find out, I'll do a deep dive into the research of every possible thing that has ever happened there, to kind of discount or approve paranormal experiences. And this time I just kind of went without researching anything. Only saw the sign on the front door that said 1894. Um, so when I got there, I went into the archives section and I just said, "Hey, I'm here." And they said, "Okay, go ahead, go explore." And I said, "Okay." And I was so excited. And I had just gotten a few pieces of new ghost equipment. So I brought it in there really quickly and I didn't know where to start. I was like, how am I going to do this? I can't even believe I get this place to myself. I can do whatever. So I did an initial walkthrough and I got impressions in each room and I kind of recorded that, me talking about, how I felt around each space. Then I went back to each of those rooms and put out equipment and did experiments here and there with like cat balls or the EMF detector, asking, is anyone here? Showing them how to use the EMF detector. I'll be posting a video on that soon about the whole investigation. But what's interesting, looking back in the videos and editing, I keep saying I hear footsteps. I feel like I'm hearing footsteps, but no, like I keep trying to brush it off. Like, no, it's nothing. And then I start to hear knocks, like just, and I realize looking back on the footage, I should have been asking them to communicate with knocks, not like what I kept doing. But honestly, I was a little scared. I was like, I don't know if I have anything to respond quite yet. And I was hesitant to do EVP on my own. So I didn't at first. I just did what I mentioned. And then I kind of am walking outside after I do the investigation and I'm filming, the exterior of the jail. And Vichy Garrig, did you meet her? The archivist there?
I don't think there was, I don't think that there was anybody there from the actual jail. Was
Melissa,
there?
I think that she had one person there and
Maybe.
they just signed off and said, here you go. I
Yeah.
mean, we started during the day as well.
Mhm.
There were what, 5 of us?
Yeah, it was one of
there
our listeners
initially,
had rented
then
it out and
more.
invited us to
Oh,
come up
okay.
with them.
I
So
see. I
Yeah,
see.
but that was really interesting for that location. Now I do have to ask, did you utilize a spirit box or anything like that
So
in that location?
I go out
Okay.
front and I meet the archivist, the specialist that works there. And she starts telling me all the history of the jail and then goes into all of the experiences she has had personally at the jail and at the courthouse across the way there.
Right.
And she's very into it. She likes to talk about the stuff. They do fundraising through paranormal events and things like that. So they're very open to talking about these things. So she takes me inside, shows me around the archives, explains all of the artifacts they have from the jail. And she goes, oh, we get Class A EVPs here all the time. I go in and they tell me good morning and I hear it outright. And I go, what? I went in blind. I had no idea what this jail was or anything. And so I didn't initially do the EVP sessions, but she goes, do you want to hear some? And she pulls up on her computer like all these saved files of EVPs, and they cover the entire screen. Like she has hundreds of recorded EVPs from this jail. She plays me one where you can literally hear a man's voice saying, shut up, out loud, which they didn't hear at the time, her and the other person. It was just wild. So after she showed me that, I'm like, okay, I cannot leave here without doing some kind of an EVP session. So I'm going to get back in there and do that. I wind up going to the spot where I felt most uneasy, which in talking to her, I told her about me walking through and which cells I felt what and where. And she confirmed my feelings, basically saying, that is the cell where I got this EVP telling me to shut up. That is the cell where they told me straight up, he is a liar about the man she was with. And you can hear it. And she played me those. And those were the cells that I felt really weird in. Like, and I had recorded initially in my walkthrough saying, I don't like it in here. This feels really weird. So that was wild to me. So when I went back in, I was asking questions. And I asked, did you tell Vichy to shut up? And I waited and I didn't hear anything. And then I said, were you a prisoner here? And I swear, in front of me, like I was in the cell I felt uncomfortable in front of me, I felt like I could literally hear some kind of a voice. And in my recording session, you hear me pause from before asking my question for a really long time. And then I kind of finished up. I was just like, what color jacket am I wearing? I asked another question and then I turned it off and I felt like I needed to go. I just felt like it was time to go. And I'm walking down the long corridor and I'm just like looking behind me. Like I felt being pushed out, time to go.
I have a question. Was that on as you enter the secondary hallway at the very back? You had that experience?
On the first or second floor?
I think it was the first floor, but it might have been the second floor. It's been quite a few years.
It was the second floor.
Was it? Okay.
So it was the second floor. And it wasn't the maximum security side, with all those bolted doors, the one that the right, it was the one on the left with all the windows facing the road. The one all the way at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, that I believe is the cell that Kelly did not like.
Yeah. No.
Are you kidding?
No. No. That's the same one. I mean, it's been what, 3 years?
I think it's
We've
been
done
3 years
maybe
since we did that.
4. It's been a while,
But yeah, we were
yeah.
probably in it for about 5 minutes, and Kelly's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like she goes, there's something that does
Wow.
not feel right in here.
Yeah.
No,
I was very uncomfortable.
that's crazy. Very interesting. Oh, wow. Wow, wow. Yeah, it's wild. So I'm a big believer now in the EVP thing. I got home and I downloaded that, what is it, Waveform or something? I hadn't had experience in editing or trying to amplify EVPs before. And I asked my ghost friend online, I'm like, do you know what to do? And he said, just amplify it. And I sat here till 10 o'clock at night with my headphones, just like,
Yeah. Holding them down. Yeah.
my wife got home
We
and I'm
do
like,
that all the
"Listen,
time.
listen, do you hear that?" And she's just like, I'm gonna go shower. It's late.
Oh no. Well, very relatable to us. That's what we do all the time.
I'm like, do you hear that? Oh, so yes, I amplify them and I get home and I amplify them.
Mhm.
I couldn't tell the second part where I actually felt like someone was saying something and I could hear it out loud. I couldn't, you can see it on the EVP and hear it, but I can't make it out. But before that, when I asked, did you tell Vichy to shut up?
Mhm.
You hear voice go, I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
It's nice
did.
to get that recognition and that
And it just
corroboration.
correlates
Yep.
everything I was
Yep.
like, it was wild. And for a few days, I mean, probably a week after, I mean, I had to go back to work and live my normal human life. And I just did not know what to do with this experience. I was literally telling my coworkers, like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how to like show this or explain this to anyone. So I'm glad I got to chat with you about it. And then hearing your experience, that makes me, feel a little better. Someone's
Yeah.
Well, what's really cool about that too is it's not just, sometimes you catch an EVP, like we were in the Lillian place and we were just doing the historical tour, but I always record so that later on I have the history that I can use for the podcast.
right,
And I don't want to get things wrong and stuff.
right.
And we captured a little child saying present. And it was right when we were next to what was an old school desk.
Well, initially we thought it was the dollhouse, however,
Yeah.
in the room.
Uh-huh.
But
Because
it
we were like, are
was
they talking about getting a present? And then we thought about the fact that there was a school desk there. And we were like, is it a little child saying that they were present? But that's like something that feels almost kind of residual in nature. But what you got is very intelligent because not only did it answer your question, but it
Right.
was referring back to something else that had happened when you weren't there.
right.
Right. That's what kind of shifted my dot a little bit, from my skeptical standpoint. I always kind of was trying to figure out, okay, is it intelligent or is it residual? Is it, stone tape theory, which is very possible scientifically. I also have another account called Project Haunted, which really delves into the science behind hauntings and like, is it possible? And some of the theories I'm finding are scientifically possible. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's just something imprinted. There was so much trauma here and, emotion left over. That's why probably jails are so active. But it's probably just something recorded, replaying. Who knows, right? But that was intelligent. And then just hearing her collection of EVPs and how they interact and just would say hello to her, that's just wild. Yeah.
I wonder if we have any of ours up there. That one that you got.
Like,
I mean, when she's doing the spirit box with the Estes method, she will repeat things in the way in which she hears them. And there was one where he almost sounded like a gangster or something. He was like, "What's up?" Or like not like the scream monster, not that "was up," but it had a definitive accent and you said it with this deep kind of gravelly voice. And then it's like when we listen back to it, it's what you heard.
Yeah.
wow. So you say it like you hear it, like how the voice
Yeah, I
sounds.
try to do it or do it like the same, like, if it goes over
Intonation.
multiple things or if I hear, it's a female saying, I'll try to do
Mhm.
that so that we can get kind of a feeling for it. And the really cool thing is we have an S box now from Ghost Stop that actually records the session.
Nice.
So now we can listen back to it and see if I was accurate in what I thought I was hearing. And
Yeah, that's a
if
great
we don't
feature.
catch something, we can try to catch it later. And
For sure. That's a good feature to have. It's hard because I was alone, so I couldn't do any kind of
yeah,
Estes or something
yeah.
like, so I kind of just had to use, what I had. But I would like to get into more Estes method type things. Next month, I'm heading up to Georgia. Our friends just moved up there and found out their property where they built their house is adjacent to a 200-person cemetery that is grown over and kind of lost in time.
Oh,
So
wow.
she's
Oh,
getting really into like figuring it out, seeing what she can do to help clean it up and preserve it. And of course,
Yeah.
everyone is starting to kind of hear what I'm doing. So they're like, we should do a ghost investigation. So
I love
I
it.
was hopefully thinking of getting some Estes in there, having a group of people for sure.
That's
Nice.
good.
Now, you said that you have sensitivities to certain energies. Is there one above another? That was just something that I was seeing on your IG.
Yeah, so between my first encounter at the courthouse and then this, I kind of just I haven't honed in on anything yet, because I took a big break after that initial courthouse experience. I went to college, I kind of fell out of paranormal stuff and was doing life stuff. And then lately, since we've been traveling, I've been getting back into it. So now that I just had like that was my most recent experience at the jail.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of just now getting back into it and trying to figure out where I want to go with my investigation style and how researchy I want to get with how what I'm experiencing and is it possible? And I'm just trying to still figure everything out. Hence that paranormal rabbit hole I've just been going down. It's like every investigation leaves me with more questions than answers.
Yeah. And we also get torn with, do you want to know the research information before you go in?
Right.
Will it bias you? Should you find out after? It's so nice when you watch the shows on TV like Kindred Spirits. They'll go in and maybe do something blind and then they'll go do the research and then get to come back in. And we're like, well, we don't get the luxury of doing
Right,
that
I'm doing
usually.
that. Right, right. Exactly. That's why I thought this experience was really special because I kind of got to do all of that in that like 4-hour block.
Yeah, that's
And
very
I
cool.
can't wait. I'm going to put out a longer video, probably on YouTube, of that. So it should be out within a month or so. So you can see.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the spots that we've been to, we haven't actually investigated. I've eaten there is the Lakeside Inn in Mount Dora. And you just
It's
stayed there,
so
right?
beautiful there. Yes, I just stayed there.
End of March. Yeah.
Yeah, overnight for my birthday. And I called up and I said, "Hi, you probably think this is a weird question, but I want to book for my birthday, and I was wondering what your most haunted room is." She goes, "Actually, it's really not that weird. We get asked that quite a lot." So I booked one of the most haunted rooms allegedly on the property, the Sunset Cottage, and we stayed there overnight. We did a few experiments. We did the flashlight experiment in our room. I don't put too much stock in that experiment. The mag lights, I had two different mag lights. One
Sure.
was smaller, one was a little bigger. You put them in that loosely connected state. And it just started going off, just sitting there even before we were doing anything, just in the room. And, you start asking it questions, and it can kind of fit into anything you ask, though. Like, we were asking it questions based on the history that we heard from accounts in the room, from hotel staff, from things online. But it just wasn't consistent enough for me to think it was anything intelligent. I think it was just the mag light. I wound up turning the mag light off that was doing it, and the one next to it, I said, "Okay, I'm going to turn this off. If you'd like to still communicate, use the one right next to it." And it just everything kind of stopped. So I don't know. And I know how that works with the mag light. Like, it's been tested and temperature wise and the heating up and everything, and they're notorious for doing that. So I didn't really get any great evidence there, but the property was beautiful. The history is so rich. It was still an amazing time.
Yeah, we have I think we've had pretty good luck with the flashlight when it does actually work.
Hmm.
We've been at a lot of places where it hasn't turned on at all.
Mhm.
And then we've had other times. The first time it ever happened for us, we were actually out of jail, and it was the Squirrel Cage Jail up in Iowa.
Oh.
And it was the first time that we actually were hosting a ghost hunt. So we were very nervous. We had like 9 listeners with us, and we'd never done this before with, hosting an event. We were just always along for the ride kind of thing. So I was like, oh, I hope everything goes okay. And
Uh-huh.
so we'd gone out and gotten the mag light, and I kind of, I unscrewed it to that point and I set it down and I said, if there's anybody with us, and we were in one of the warden's rooms in there, just turn on the flashlight for us. And bam, it turned right on. And I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, maybe this really works. Cause when you see it on TV, you're like, do they have it rigged? And I did one of the Orlando ghost tours, and they
Mhm.
took us into, I think it was called the Treetop Bar or something like that.
Mhm.
And he had done a flashlight thing, and it was going on and off with things that he was saying. And I'm like, do they have something where that's like programmed,
Yeah,
So I
like a
wasn't really,
remote or something. Yes.
yeah, I
'Cause
wasn't
had
really
done.
buying it. But then
Yeah.
when it was us, and I'm like, well, I know I didn't screw around with anything, and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I was just like, oh my gosh. And that night it would come on and off when we would request and stuff. So I got the feeling that it was, but like you said, there are other times. I think you have to be kind of intuitive about, does this really feel like something's happening, or did we get it like, because when you unscrew it and screw it back on, did we get it not quite right, so that it's actually
Right.
clicking itself on because we didn't get it quite off enough. And like you said, there is the heating up kind of thing. But we've had
Yeah.
times where I'm sure that is something paranormal happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had some circumstances where it seemed very legit in terms of the reactions to us,
Mhm.
answering questions and things of that nature. But then other times where it's kind of like, I think it's kind of happenstance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seemed
very
like it was participating, but then yeah, hit or miss.
hit or miss.
I think
Yes.
is what you were going to say. Yeah,
Yes. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
So that being said, do you have a favorite, in terms of the modern things you can use now
Mhm.
for investigations? Do you have a favorite
Technique.
item, favorite technique,
Yeah, so
favorite
I would
tool?
say honestly, just the recorders. The EVP sessions are really amazing. And you don't need to go out and buy the most fancy recorder. You can use your phone. It's where I got the last one. But I did have one that I used two at a time. I use a different one, like a little Sony one and my phone at the same time. But that's like, you get some great evidence with that. And everyone has access to a recorder. Another thing is, oh, I have it here. I love this guy. Melmeter, the one with the built-in REM. That's cool because you can just set it down and have it be a REM pod or have it, detect handheld. So I like that one too. Just to get a baseline of, the environment when you go in, and then to go back through investigating with it is very handy, I think.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
tend I tend not to rely too much on equipment, so it's kind of newer for me, especially from where I came from so long ago. I did do dowsing rods at Lakeside Inn as well. Again, kind of hit or miss, but I liked some dowsing rods. I've seen some pretty interesting sessions with those two.
We've actually done it using the Estes method too, where because
Yeah,
Kelly, that's like her thing, and so we'll blindfold her so that maybe it
with
helps to, she's not moving them as much with her mind, kind of thing.
oh cool. With the dowsing rods, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and with the noise canceling headphones. So I can't hear the questions that are being asked, and then they just respond to what's being put out there.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because sometimes you don't know if, especially since you guys have sensitivities, I wonder sometimes, is your mind crossing the dowsing rods, or are they actually
Right,
being crossed by something else?
right, right. I have thought the same thing as well, like your own energy affecting it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Although there's been so many times where I get a different reaction than what I'm totally expecting. So if I'm able to control it with my mind, it's like that's not the answer that I was expecting to receive. So
Well, and
you
what's
just
really cool is Kelly's gotten so sensitive with it that she can tell when it's different energies. Like when we were at the lighthouse in St. Augustine, and we were in the keeper's house, and there
Mhm.
was Joseph and, is it Maria?
I think it's
And she
Maria.
could
Yeah.
tell when it was a male hand that was helping her and when it was a female hand. She said, I can tell that the
Wow.
energies are changing with who's crossing the dowsing rods.
Wow. now.
Yeah, different energy coming through them.
Isn't that
Yeah,
crazy? Like, and you
definitely.
can't explain that. How would
No.
you ever explain that? That's why it's so hard to bring any kind of science into
Evidence. Yeah.
hunting, because you can't replicate experiments. Science relies on replication. So in terms of ghost hunting, it's almost impossible. But with things like psi, like psychic energy and things, there's a lot of research being done with that, because you can measure the energy and perform experiments on that, like the Parapsychological Association and stuff has published many research papers on that. But with ghosts, it's so hard.
Yeah, and like you said, we like to just go in with our own feelings too.
Right.
But it does make it hard, because then how do you
You
show it
can't.
to other people? How do you prove
Exactly.
it to other people?
It's all based
And
on testimony.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's why sometimes people are like, well, they're not really buying into it, because some of the most profound experiences we've had
Personal.
are personal, and we don't even share them with each other. It's, it's like,
Exactly.
this happened to me, but you didn't experience it, so you don't know.
Exactly. But you know what? The paranormal, like experiences like that, go back to the beginning of humans, of Homo sapiens. So, like in Mesopotamia, when they created language 5,000 years ago, they recorded on those clay tablets ghosts, experience with ghosts. They were part of like their daily lives. It's only our culture today that kind of discounts all these experiences that we have. Back then, you find like, I don't know, like you find stuff on their daily life, stuff on their taxes, their state system, government, and then you'll find like, oh, how to keep the ghosts away. What you can do if you have someone coming back and haunting you. Oh, you saw Auntie in the hallway. Oh, here's what you can do to send her back. And you'd find like all this stuff written in their culture dealing with ghosts in day-to-day life. It's pretty normal, a part of like the human condition and experience. Like
Yeah, in
since the
terms of
beginning.
in terms of the states, we've tamped that down pretty well until not that long ago. And now it's gotten so commercialized, it's like, well,
Yeah.
what's legit, what isn't?
Right, right. Now with everything that's come out, you had Mesopotamia, then you had the Greeks and the Romans, then you get into like medieval, like the Stuart line saying, no, you got to do this and this and this because of religion with the monotheistic God, which kind of twisted everything into what it is today, angels and demons and all of this. When
Right.
really, I don't think it has to do with angels and demons and all this at all. I think the concept of the disembodied man is something that's been shown in the Bible. It's been shown
Yep.
with quantum mechanics, with parallel universes. So, like Stephen Hawking, it can be proven, like, if you want to look at it historically, way back to Jesus times, and then it can be proven kind of in newer scientific studies as well, like the idea of what a ghost is. It's pretty cool have you ever read the Bible and seen what a ghost is? Like in the Bible?
Oh yes.
Studied. Studied.
We actually we did a bonus cast on it and
Oh,
stuff.
did you? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
because
It's
you know,
fascinating.
when you come at it because we both are Christian, so we do look at things through that kind of veil. But the Christians, generally, if you speak to a Christian, everything is demonic and it's meant to deceive you. And I'm like, well, then how come people are talking about their grandma coming back and their spouse or their dog or their cat? I mean,
Right.
to me, that's not deceiving me, because it just makes me believe more in an afterlife. So that to me solidifies my belief that something about us must go on after our bodies are done here.
Exactly.
So I'm like,
Exactly.
I don't think it would be deceiving us in that way. And generally speaking, I would think a demonic interaction would be something negative. And I'll knock on some wood. So far, Kelly and I have never had a negative experience. We've had things that might be a little, like she said, she didn't feel comfortable in that cell, but we haven't had anything like, violently throw us against a wall or
Right.
push
Nothing like
us or
demonic as you would
yeah.
say in today's culture.
Right.
Yeah, so nothing like that. So, and I'm like, clearly in the Bible it teaches, because when Jesus is like walking across the water and his disciples are all freaking out, they're like, "Ooh, it's a ghost."
Right.
Well, he doesn't go, "Guys, there is no such thing as a ghost. What are you talking about?" He just goes, "No, I'm not a ghost. It's me. What are you talking about?" So I'm
Right.
like,
And
there
even
must be ghosts.
exactly. And even in his resurrection, right? He appears to his disciples and he says, he stood beside them and they were frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. That's literally in the Bible. And he doesn't discount them. He says, a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have, right? So he
Yep.
doesn't say, you guys are, what about ghosts? No, he's just like, and he has the ability to kind of appear in different spaces with his physical body in the Bible.
Mhm.
So Christians say that he rose in his same body. However, he could vanish and appear inside locked rooms. He was not a ghost, so that tells us that ghosts are not resurrected souls, and vice versa. Resurrected souls are not ghosts. So what are they? The
Exactly.
Bible kind of
Yeah.
has these like little clues, and
Yep. The little nuggets.
and then the whole Saul, King Saul and the Witch of Endor, that
Yeah.
whole thing, using necromancy to consult a seer to raise the dead prophet Samuel. And it literally says they witness a spirit coming up from the ground. In the Bible, they say
Yep.
this through
Yep.
necromancy, which King Saul had kicked out all the wizards and the magicians from his land. But when it came down to it, and he really wanted to know, am I gonna beat this? He went right back and said, no, get me that girl back here that I used to talk to. I want to know. And sure enough, so what was Samuel? Was he a ghost? Where was he before that?
Uh-huh.
Like, there's evidence of another category of existence, like not angel or demon, but kind of that disembodied man that you're able to interact with
Mhm.
on an earthly plane.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we believe, even if, some people, let's say, if you believe there's a heaven and a hell, and some people have gone there, that there must be some way that you can sometimes come back. Because, when people are having either a near-death experience, they'll see a loved one, or people are actually in the process of dying, and you'll hear them talk about, grandma's
Right.
come, or my husband's here to get me. So there must be something in between. And there also seems to be, I hear a lot of stories of people where they're like, a loved one has just died, and at that same time that loved one dies, they have something else happen. We had somebody join us on a conversation where, was it the grandmother had died and the clock went off, that it hadn't gone off in like years that she had given them or something?
It was the temperature, wasn't it the temperature
Something like that.
clock?
And it went crazy. And then
It
they
was
get the phone
Sean.
call, and, grandma has passed away,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
stuff
There's
like that.
many instances like that
Yeah, so
recorded.
there's
Yeah,
got to be something
definitely.
about your soul that you can at least go around and say goodbye before you leave. And then I think there is an allowance that you could sometimes come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think and that's just my personal belief, is you can come and go. How often they come back is, undetermined, but I feel like they can come and go and interact when they see the need.
Right. The idea of it is so prevalent across like geography and history. All of these accounts that everyone has had worldwide since the beginning of human communication, that you can't deny that kind of stuff. And then, I think there's like three things that are very constant since the idea of a ghost has been recorded. One is that the dead were usually buried. We usually put them in the ground. The other is that they were usually buried with things. Still to this day, grandma's favorite ring, she was attached to it, buried. And then in other cultures, they were buried with things, mainly. And then lastly, the dead, at least since the beginning, seem to return to the scene of the crime, the scene of the trauma that happened. That seems to be like a key thing in hauntings, the traumatic incident, to where they kind of still just hang around or are drawn to it somehow, some way. So those three things have been part of hauntings, I think, since the beginning of human just recording hauntings. It's just like an observation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also we find a lot with people who had a house or something that they really loved, that they're just very attached to. Or if there was some area, because sometimes you'll be at a place and you're like, nothing traumatic happened here. Why does it have a haunting? And then you
Right.
find out, well, maybe it was a little kid had loved coming there to play. And
Right.
so when they pass away, they're like, well, that's one of my happy memories. So it's almost like they return back to a happier
Happy
time.
memory too. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
kind of fascinated by that as well because that's not so recorded in history, the happy
Yeah.
thing, that they stay around. Usually they only come back because they're a little, put off or something. But there is a house. Are you familiar with the Waterhouse Residence Museum?
No,
The Waterhouse Residence in Maitland?
no.
Mm-mm.
No? Oh my gosh. So it's been closed. It's been
Write it
closed.
down. Write it down.
Yeah. It's been closed since last year. It's located in Lake Lily Park. It is the original 1884 house that William Waterhouse built. He was a founding member of Maitland in Orlando, basically. And they used to do tours of the house and haunted tours and things, but it's been closed for repairs. And now they discovered it needs a new roof because it has mold. So I haven't been
Ah.
able to get in there, but I stalk the heck out of it. So it's got more than one haunt going on. And the history is fascinating. So about 3 or 4 generations of the Waterhouse family have lived in there. 3 members of the family have died in the home, or had their wakes in the home. 1 member died in the home. And the reports and stories that are happening there are very interesting. Like things get moved, people will see physical people walking back and forth within the house. Oh, where do I start? I just love this house. I can't wait to get in it. But it brings me back to they think it's haunted by the family members because they were so happy to be there and loved growing up there and they established the land and all of that. And you can kind of feel that when you're there. So it kind of makes me question my whole theory of, okay, this is the recipe for a haunting, because then it just like, no, then it's not. So what is it? What is it? Then it would have to be some kind of intelligent from beyond the grave existence, some personality imprint of you that has left your body and is out there and able to come back to this plane. Right?
Yeah, I think it runs the gamut. I think there's so many residual, but then also so many intelligent.
Right.
So
How do you know what you're gonna get?
you don't. And I don't know that we're gonna care once we get there to actually ask those questions. But
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I always tell people. I said, I mean, we do have people that we communicate obviously on the other side, but it's not like you had one person who's like passed away and then they come back and go, guys, I know what's going on now. Get the
Yeah.
recorders going. I can tell you exactly what's happening. So
Right.
it's like they don't give you that information. It's like, yeah, I'm here. Here's what happened or whatever. But they don't say, okay, well, when you get to the other side,
Right.
St. Peter's there, and then he says, where do you want to hang out? Or
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you don't have somebody who's telling you that.
Like Houdini tried to do that with his wife or something. Yeah, the code word or
Yeah.
something.
right.
It never happened,
And it
right?
never happened. So
No.
it's like if there was somebody who was going to come back and really prove that there is something to the other side or to psychics or whatever, you'd think Houdini would be the one.
Yeah.
Well, but then you also get circumstances where when you don't know the history prior to, like the Marshall House, when we were there, we weren't going and staying there to investigate. Literally just walked in. We had our stuff because we were going further up north from Savannah. And as soon as I walked in, I had this impression of a little kid jumping on the bed. So then I get out the EMF detector and all of a sudden it's going crazy right there. Through the dowsing rods and conversation, we got that indentured servants had there was a
Well, what
shipwreck.
happened is she identified herself as a young woman. And then she
Well,
said, that-
girl.
yeah. And she said she'd been an indentured servant. So we got this information. We go to dinner and I'm like, this is crazy. There weren't indentured servants in Georgia. Come on. And she was Irish too. That was the other thing. She was Irish. So I'm like, Irish indentured servants in Georgia? No. So I go and I read and I'm just looking up history. And sure enough, a ship that was carrying Irish indentured servants had crashed outside of the Savannah area, had a shipwreck. And Oglethorpe told them all they could come on. You can come and be a part of our colony here.
Wow.
And serve out your indenture ship here. And I was like,
That's
what?
pretty incredible. How did you find out it was indentured servants? Through which method? Did
The
you say?
dowsing rods,
The
just
dowsing
asking
rods.
questions. We
Okay.
got,
Yep.
it was a
Okay.
female, what her age was, and then we got the feeling that she'd been a servant. And
I'm trying to remember.
I don't even know why we asked the indentured servant part.
Yeah,
She
I'd
said
have
she was
to.
Irish, and we were like, why did you come here? And it was kind of like something about being a servant. And so I was like, an indentured servant? And it was like, yes. And we're like, this is not possible.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really crazy.
I'd have to. I mean, that was probably 5 years ago. Sometimes you go to so many different locations, and I can't remember how that came up.
Yeah. But it was really cool because we didn't have the history ahead of time.
Yeah.
And she was just some random, I mean, she wouldn't be like in a book somewhere, this ghost haunts this place, and
Right.
this is why, generally speaking.
Right. Right. That's pretty
So,
incredible.
but that's why we love the paranormal, like you say. It's
Yeah.
like you can't figure it out, so it can be frustrating, but it also keeps you going because you're like, I want to try to understand if I can.
Right. I don't know why anyone else would want to do anything else. It's like, I don't know why most people aren't driven to just do this all the time.
Can I just get paid to do this always?
Seriously. Come on now. Just-
You clearly also love cemeteries, and I was so jealous seeing that you were down in Argentina in was it the Recoleta
Yes. Yep.
Cemetery?
Recoleta Cemetery. And then my wife is Brazilian. So
Okay.
in the same trip, we went to her hometown, Sao Paulo in Brazil. And there was another cemetery, the Cemetery de Consolação, which was Sao Paulo's first official cemetery.
Nice.
And yeah, they're just beautiful. And they're huge. They're just
They're huge.
massive.
Just mausoleum after mausoleum after
And they go down, which is the coolest part. You know, like you can kind of pop your head in and see that there are multiple family members from generations, like stacked up in coffins going down into the ground that
Wow.
you see. And then you have the mausoleum on the top where people can go and make offerings and things or pray. And yeah, it was amazing.
You've mentioned your wife a couple of times, so we have to ask, what does she think about this paranormal
Oh my
investigating?
gosh. So being from Brazil, they have a lot of spiritualism in Brazil. So like candomblé, like the white kind of magic ceremonies and things where they consult spirits that come down and kind of are channeled through mediums and things. It's kind of just a normal part of their culture. Kind of like us going to Casadega and seeing a psychic. But it's more, just prominent there. It's not abnormal to go do that. So she believes in the spirits and the paranormal and things like that. I think she's a little hesitant to make contact, especially since I've gotten into doing this, and she's very sensitive, very, very sensitive. She's actually, we did a genetic thing, 2% Native American, like to America. So
Wow.
I always feel like anything Native American, they're amazing. Like spiritually, they're just so connected to the earth, everything. Anyway, she has this very developed sense for not focusing on it at all. A little follow-up with her after my jail investigation. I was up there alone. So I'm eating dinner at the hotel I'm staying at that night. And I decide, okay, I'll just send a little picture of me eating like this. And this was after the jail investigation. And then I look at the photo and it's like, I just was like this at the table and I snapped a selfie. And it was completely like blurred. And I snapped
Weird.
one again and it was fine.
Huh.
But I was like, oh my God, because I almost left without saying goodbye to the spirit because I was so like, wow, this was an amazing experience. I got distracted. I almost didn't say goodbye, but I was halfway in my car and then I poked my head out and I was like, oh, stay here, please. I know. Goodbye. Stay here. Thank you. I don't know if maybe I didn't do something proper, but I just thought it was weird. I mean, it's probably nothing, but my phone doesn't usually do that. I use my phone for everything. And I was sitting at the dinner table, like snapping a selfie, and it was blurred, and I still have it. And I thought
somebody was joining you for dinner just to keep you company.
It was bizarre. And then the next night I get home and we're in bed and I wake up to my wife having some kind of dream, but she's like trying to say something out loud over and over, and it's just bizarre. And I sit there awake listening to her for a little bit because I want to hear what she's going to say. But it just sounded like, ew, 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 like over and over. Like the words weren't formed, but she was getting more worked up and more worked up. So I finally shook her. And she goes, "Oh, I had the weirdest dream." And I made her tell me right there because she would forget it, right? It was like the middle of the night.
Sure.
I made her tell me so I would remember too. And the next day she told me more about it and I recorded it. She was so bizarre. She was visited by like, it was our house, but behind our house were like gates to some kind of cemetery. She was looking where to put a hot tub, but went outside and it looked like a different time in our house. And there were gates to a cemetery in our backyard. And she said, all of a sudden, this dust or smoke kind of billows up, and she thought it was weird. And she sees this younger woman with long dark hair kind of coming forward, floating towards her, almost like she said, like a big white dress, almost like a ballerina, like floating towards her, not walking on this dust, going like this towards her, a young woman. And she looked at her, and I'm trying to remember. And then she kind of disappeared back into the gate. And then a woman that was older with darker hair and more modern clothing stood in front of her and was trying to say something. And my wife just kept saying, "No, you're dead. It's okay. It's okay." And she said the woman's face kind of turned like confused. And she was worried the woman was getting mad the more she was saying it. And I
Mm.
said, "You must have been saying that, what I heard," because she was like, "No, mama, mama." Like it sounded like she was saying, "No, you're not dead. You're dead. It's okay. You're a ghost. It's okay." But the woman was trying to tell her something, like mouthing something, and then she woke up because I woke her up. And it
Oh,
was just
wow.
weird, like some kind of spirit guide was trying to consult her, or I don't know what that was, but she doesn't have dreams like that every night. Just so happened to be the night after I get home from that.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get a message across.
All of it was weird. It's not like that happens every day.
Yeah, wow.
Uh,
You'll be sure to say goodbye more
yes. Oh,
firmly.
yes. I had a little post-it here of what I need to do better.
Although we've been doing this a while and we'll still like be pulling out and be a block down the road and go, wait, we forgot to say you are not welcome to come home with us. You have to stay here. Get out of the car. Yeah.
Right? And like, do I actually have to burn this for it to work, or can I just like carry it around? Because I can't burn it at locations.
That's true.
I don't know.
We don't normally burn sage. We just have the conversation right when we're done and thank them
Right.
for the experience and for having the conversations. But you have to stay here, and we
Right.
appreciate,
But there's other people that have told us you
participating.
have to back out of a location, like, walk
Right.
backward out or throw water over your shoulder or
Yes,
something.
that's like a thing in cemeteries too. Leaving a cemetery with never leave with your back towards it. Always go back out, and yeah, things like that.
We've never had any trouble yet. So
No, we
Oh.
visit a lot of them, but we do carry black tourmaline with us. We try to leave it in the car when we're doing an investigation because we've actually had experiences where it tamped down the interactions.
activity.
It was very bizarre.
Really?
Um,
Is it protective? I'm not familiar. Yes.
Yeah, it's a
It's
protective
supposed to be.
stone. It's a black
Yeah.
stone. It's supposed to keep bad energies away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So where's like the most the place that's left the biggest imprint on you? What do you think?
Oh gosh. I don't know.
That's tough. Probably
To
for
narrow
me,
down.
the coolest experience, and we always go into places now and ask if a ghost can make itself appear as a color, because we went to McPike Mansion in Alton, Illinois,
Ah,
and you go down into what had been the wine cellar, and it is pitch black down there when you go down there. You can't even see your hand in front of your face.
mhm.
And all of the spirits there appear as a different color. And when she was telling us the story before we went down, you're just thinking, uh-huh. And we
Mhm.
go down and sit down, and Kelly and I were not sitting right next to each other. We were kind of across from each other.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I could see this like swirling purple color in front of my face. And it started like really small, and then it would get really big until I was like enveloped in it. And then it would kind of go down again, and then it would swirl up. And at first I thought, well, my eyes are adjusting because we went from it was still dark outside, but from going from somewhat light to absolutely no light. My eyes are just adjusting and doing something weird.
Mhm.
But it kept going, and it must have been there for like 10 to 15 minutes. And we had a shaman who was with us, and she said, Gertrude likes to manifest as purple. And I was like, there's something purple in front of me or enveloping around me. And usually I don't speak up either. And then I heard Kelly and the girl who was
Well-
sitting next to her go, yeah, we could see something purple in front of Diane.
Well, what's interesting is it wasn't a power of suggestion either, because I had already seen it before the shaman said that out loud. And so again, I keep everything close. I don't want to, alter anyone else's experiences. So I
Uh-huh.
had been seeing that, and it did. It looked like not aurora borealis, but it would concentrate and then kind of peel out from there and spread out and become a little bit less vibrant and then come back together again.
Mhm.
And so by the time Diane started identifying that she saw it, I had already been seeing it for a while.
Wow.
It was
And the gal
so
next to me,
amazing. I mean, I was just sitting there like I'm sure I had a huge grin on my face, and I was just, my mind was blown because it lasted for so long.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
wasn't scared at all. I was just amazed. I was just like, what is happening?
That is
And
amazing. I've never heard of anything like that before,
no,
like an encounter like that, or the
and it's
colors.
like all of them there do it. It was like there was a white one and a red one, supposedly. All I saw was purple, but other people were seeing, like somebody said, well, I'm seeing red. And then we actually caught an EVP from the one that usually the spirit is named Sarah, who usually shows up as red. And
Uh-huh.
I caught an EVP because I had my recorder going, and that was right across from me too. And she was like, it's
Wow.
me. It was definitely a female voice. So it was, McPike Mansion was wow. It was
I'm gonna write that location down. That's interesting.
the whole city of Alton is just crazy haunted. It's just a little knockabout town, but it's got a lot of stuff going on there.
well, if you've heard about Robert Wadlow,
No,
the
Tallest man
yeah.
in America to ever live. He
No.
grew up there, and he's buried in the cemetery there. And so if you ever go into a Ripley's auditorium or a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, they
Mhm.
always have like either a statue of him or pictures of him. And that's
Okay.
where he grew up and raised and stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah, it's a
Cool.
fantastic area.
Is that your most?
Would that, yeah, was that yours?
Yeah, probably because I did see I haven't seen a full-bodied apparition other than a shadow figure at that particular location. And I wasn't scared. It wasn't negative.
Mhm.
He literally walked past me and I watched him go like this, even though, it was completely pitch black.
Mhm.
They say shadow figures are darker than dark, blacker than black. That's exactly what it was. And as I was doing this from my left to my right, he stopped, backed up, hunkered down, and looked at me. And sitting there going, "Hi."
Wow. But you weren't scared. You didn't get any
Uh-uh.
kind of
No.
threatening energy.
No, and I've heard so many people do
Mhm.
feel that about shadow figures that they've encountered, but that's the only official one that I can say without a doubt that that's what it was. I've seen little bits here and there of like darker figures here and there when we've been investigating, but nothing that I could say, without
Yeah.
a doubt that that's what it
Yeah.
was.
Kind of something you can explain away,
Right.
perhaps.
Yeah,
I,
maybe it was a trick of the eyes or something like that, but this was
right.
not that.
It's interesting you talk about shadow people. I keep hearing about that lately. I had some friends visit Missouri State Penitentiary, and they said that they saw many shadow people. Like there was not denying it, but that it did not feel threatening or malevolent or bad. They were just there, and they said they kind of seemed annoyed that they were in their space. And that was just
Sure.
kind of it. Nothing bad though. But
Yeah.
I thought every person from that investigation said they saw shadow people. I asked them separately. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I kind of feel that shadow people, it's just either they can't manifest fully or, we don't know. I feel like a lot of what we're experiencing too is multidimensional. And that's
Right.
why sometimes cryptids look like they're, you call them blurry creatures.
Uh-huh.
And that's why, is because it's like they're in a different dimension. And so when
Right.
they're manifesting out of that, is that why they come across as blurry? Is that why when people take a ghost picture, it seems like it's always blurry?
Right.
Is it just that there's some kind of energy, something that's happening there? And so sometimes I wonder
Yeah.
if a shadow figure, it's just like they're not able to manifest completely.
Yeah,
Right.
or their vibration level is just different.
Right. And it's getting kind of translated in that parallel universe concept where like it could actually be persons or entities from a parallel universe or dimension. Like time isn't linear. It can curl back on itself. That was a Stephen Hawking thing. So spirits could be like trapped in a time loop or something.
Mhm.
Kind of like when you experience deja vu, maybe.
Right.
It's a different dimension or parallel universe that's like the loop is intersecting in your future temporarily, and then it's gone.
We always joke about this. I want to hear about a ghost sighting in parachute pants, but it's going to be once we're a spirit.
I
We're
know
gonna
what
be
is
talking about us.
we can't get past the 1800s, man. What is that? I'm always saying like I want to see an ancient Egyptian or something. I want to see
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always just
yeah.
locked into this certain period. And I've heard people say, well, maybe we don't see older spirits because they've developed to a certain point where they've moved on and they're not, stuck to being in this plane. It's almost like there's different levels. So somebody who's recently passed away, that's why you don't really see a bunch of people in t-shirts and shorts. I mean, sometimes you do
Right.
hear about ghosts like that, but it's almost like
Mhm.
it's different levels, kind of like the movie Ghost, where they have different levels of what they can and can't do. And as they are more capable or learn more or get whatever they need to get, then they move on to the next. Cause we
Right,
don't
that
see
makes
ghost
sense.
dinosaurs and
Oh, right.
things like that too.
Right.
Or is it just simply a time slip?
And that's the other thing, when people ask us what's a ghost, I'm like, I can be across the gamut with this stuff because I don't know if it's not, we're seeing that woman in a period dress because there's something that's locked in with that 1800s with our time period, and we're overlapping each other, and she's seeing us in our clothes, probably wondering what in the world, women in pants, and we're
Mhm.
seeing her in a period dress, and none of us are dead. It's just that our time has all of a
Are
sudden
right.
crossed each other somehow. And
Right.
I'm just waiting for that journal entry that goes, today I saw a woman wearing canvas on her legs and some kind of short shirt. It was obscene. I mean,
Right.
we haven't found it
Right.
yet, but
Right. That's so true. I hear of people recounting like, oh, I saw my grandma or my mom. They don't really say what they're wearing, but
Mhm.
like recent things like I saw my aunt or my grandma or my mom, but they
Yeah.
don't know what they're wearing.
I mean, I'm assuming they wear whatever,
They
would have been typical for them at the time. And they're just not, maybe we focus more on the
maybe
fact that we're
yeah,
seeing
maybe
somebody
it's
in a
our own
period dress
maybe
because
it's our
it's
own
not normal.
projection mentally. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just not normal for us to normally see that. So if we see somebody in our current dress, it's like, oh, that's nothing special.
Right.
Yeah.
And then another thing that could like support scientifically ghosts would be like the first law of thermodynamics: matter can neither be created nor destroyed. So where
Yep.
does the energy go? Where is it? Like we know that. So why?
Doesn't stop. Yep.
That's like number one.
Yeah. And we're electrical. So something has to happen. It doesn't just,
Right. There's a theory
Doesn't just disappear.
from these two physicists. They said that microtubules inside your brain cells made up your consciousness, and they called it quantum processing. So these little microtubules inside your brain cells were your soul or your personality. And that's why, like, when you have near-death experiences, all of the quantum information leaves the brain and continues to exist. And that's why you see like the tunnel vision or like the out of body experience. And then it comes back or something like that. But there are a couple physicists that have done research on this. I don't think it's well accepted, but it's kind of accepted. It's just an interesting take on it
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
quantum mechanics goes.
Well, and everybody's starting to get more into the quantum stuff. It used
Yeah.
to be poo-pooed, and now you're hearing
Right.
more about quantum physics
Right.
and stuff, whereas nobody
Right.
ever talked about it before. Kind of like the UFO thing. It's like everybody's
Yes.
opening up to stuff more.
Do you think like the UFO thing and cryptids and ghosts could all be the same thing, or do you think they're all separate things?
No, I definitely think they can all be the same type of thing.
Yeah, me
I mean, I
too.
honestly don't believe that UFOs are aliens per se.
Huh.
I just don't see, if we're talking about planets that are thousands of light years away.
Hmm.
I know you can make some pretty cool stuff to fly in, but I just don't see it. And why would they come here and keep coming back and keep
Right.
coming back?
Yeah.
I feel like they're here, and I don't know
Yeah.
where they are here, but
Right.
I don't feel like they're aliens coming from some distant star base somewhere.
Right, I agree with you. The more like I get into this again and the more research I do, the more it seems like, yeah, it's kind of all the same thing. But how? I have people ask me all the time, so do you believe in cryptids? And it's like, well, not like that. I don't think there's like a Mothman and a Bigfoot and a this and a that. I do know people have those experiences, but I don't know
Mhm.
what that is.
Yeah.
Thinking it's more all the same thing, like ghost, cryptid, alien.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that it's necessarily, especially the Mothman one. I honestly do believe maybe it was just a sandhill crane, because we're used to seeing them here, but up there, those would be, and they sound so creepy.
They do.
I'm
Every time
like,
we have those around our house, and every time they fly over, they look like damn pterodactyls.
Yes.
That
and you can
noise they make.
imagine
And they
at
sound like
night,
velociraptors when, when you're watching
they're not used
Exactly.
to them up
Jurassic
there.
Park.
So I'm like, I could see why they would see, some big sandhill crane flying across them in the middle of the night and be like,
Right,
what in the hell making its noise? I would be freaked out too.
right.
Wow. Well, Ashley, this has been a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.